So at PitchBook, our research, suggests that we are still in the very early stages of what could be decades-long technological shift. So from your perspective, is that true?
It's the beginning of 50 years of revolutions. The shift of startups, especially in AI right now, it's changed from being like, how can I make this AI useful, to being like, how the solutions will survive the disruption of the frontier labs. I think this kind of idea of trying to find a defensibility mode. There are a lot of companies that we are talking to, shifting the business model from charging per seat to charging per ticket solved or per results. So it's kind of result-based monetization. One of the examples of our portfolio companies, Emma is an agent doing end-to-end workflow for the enterprises. And one of the customers changed the measurement, like the ROI measurement, from cost per query to percentage of contract review without human escalation. So that's kind of triple the ROI within 2 quarters.
Where do you see the most interesting intersections of AI, commerce, and financial services today?
The intersection is definitely AI and blockchain. People start to have their own agent, automated stuff for them. Like we'll start to see more of the machine-to-machine transaction. This kind of transaction requires a sub-cent or a micro payment. So we see that blockchain and stablecoins is like a natural rail. The trust layer is very important. A lot of startups try to figuring this out because the trust layers comes with the security that has to be in place, the identity, like verification, right? Know your agent. How to survive the disruption collapse. The startups need to have to develop a very strong defensibility mode. I can recap that it's about the proprietary data, the domain expertise, the workflow integration, and the outcome-based monetization.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Melanie and I'm a research analyst from PitchBook, and today I am joined with Nat, and she will be here and we'll just be having a conversation about AI and how we are seeing AI investments today. So maybe Nat, before we begin, you can introduce yourself a little bit, what you do, and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you, Melanie. I'm Nat Chanakaran from SCB 10X Venture Capital team. Let me briefly introduce SCB 10X. SCB 10X is a technology investment arm of SCBX, which is the financial services group in Thailand. We are like a speedboat of SCBX that explore the frontier technology, invest in them, and find a potential collaboration with them. We invest globally from early stage to growth stage. We focus more on early stage AI and Web3. And our thesis is in enterprise AI with vertical domain expertise.
Oh, nice. I think, definitely you're in a great position to share with us a little bit more today. So maybe we will begin with, the big picture. So at PitchBook, our research, suggests that we are still in the very early stages of what could be a decades-long technological shift. So from your perspective, is that true? And how has your AI investment thesis evolved over the past 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, you're right. I think it's the beginning of the 50 years of revolutions. Looking back at the internet era, it has the same characteristic that the capital flow into the infrastructure, right? But there's a little bit of the difference because the internet era, right? Infrastructure flowing, even the demand or the business model was fully clear, right? But this time, what I see is that the capital, the AI infrastructure, the model capabilities, and most importantly, the demand is going in the same direction. So I think AI infrastructure companies and AI companies in overall have better economic than the internet era. And we are, just the beginning of it, right? All the, infrastructure companies right now, like the chip fabs are like running in full capacities right now. Data center as well, right? That is lining up. The big techs is coming into the space and is almost, fully reserved even before it started. Yeah. So that's why I think it's reality. It's not a
Hmm.
hyperbole or
I think I do agree with that as well. We are really seeing this shift in interest even from our clients, from our readers of our research, and looking at how, that has changed, especially even in just the last couple of months. People have gotten a lot more excited about this. Yeah, so maybe you can share a little bit about how, when you look at companies, how has that shifted over the past maybe just couple of months? Yeah, is there anything else new that you're looking at? Any changes in your investment thesis?
the shift of the startups, especially in AI right now. Um, it's changed from being like, how can I make this AI useful to being like, how the solutions will survive the disruption of the frontier labs. I think this kind of idea of trying to find a defensibility mode is very important for the startups right now. As you can see that OpenAI and Anthropic, right? They are trying to like moving down the stack from the applications layers, and now they're moving into like the deployment services, trying to be
Yeah.
the consultants. I think they can do that because they have a lot of capital, right? Yeah, and it's the enterprise itself has a lot of issues integrating, AI into the enterprise. So having like the forward deploy engineer on side of enterprise, yeah, is a good idea. But that enterprise has to, have the budget for those kind of outsourced services, right? So we looking at the startups that have the defensibility mode. For example, they should have like the data mode, have a proprietary data that is hard for frontier labs to have access, as well as they should have like the domain expertise, right? Because they need to have an experience of selling into the enterprise before and have like a long, also the team as well that we have to evaluate that all the founders and the teams has the right experience. And I think most importantly is the workflow integration. Yeah, because it's very important for the enterprise to make use of AI effectively inside the enterprise. Um, Otherwise, the model capabilities will not reflect in the productivity that the enterprise will gain. Yeah, so they should have those three things, which eventually will create the high switching cost, in my opinion. Mm.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. What you mentioned about defensibility, about workflow integration. I think these are some of the key things that have been coming up more and more lately as well. So I think I'm also hearing that, the conversation has shifted a bit from just AI capabilities to business outcomes, like what you mentioned. So I'm
Mm.
just curious, are you seeing that happen consistently across your deal flow, or are some sectors, further ahead than others in terms of adoption and commercialization?
Definitely, I think that there are a lot of companies that we are talking to, shifting the business model from charging per seat, right, to charging per ticket solved or per results. So it's kind of result based monetization. And why is that important? I think that's kind of align the incentives, between the enterprise itself and the startups, right? So enterprise want to have a successful result with the budget that they plan, right? They don't want to spend too much on AI without the ROI that is supposed to have. Yeah, one of the example of our portfolio companies called Emma. Yeah, Emma is an agent doing end-to-end workflow for the enterprises, and one of the customers changed, the measurement, like the ROI measurement from cost per query to percentage of contract review without human escalation. Yeah, so that's kind of triple the ROI within two
Mm.
quarters.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think SCB10X, you guys are sitting in a very unique position where you're an investor in enterprise SaaS companies like what you mentioned, and you're also a potential strategic customer to the SCBX group. So does this dual lens give you better signal on what actually works?
Definitely. It's very, very beneficial for, SAP 10X to have, strategic partners like our SCBX group and the SCBX business unit and group companies, right? That doing, the financial services from lending to, consumer finance, asset management, and um, exchange, right? Digital asset as well. Yeah, so it's very beneficial for us when we have the startups that we think they are ready to serve, those
Mm.
use cases. We will definitely, introduce to the champions of the BU. Yeah, and the insights from the BU is very valuable. It can, separate the signal from noise and, tell us uh, who like what kind of solutions are too good to be true, right? Yeah, and also like all the process inside the VU as well. For example, like the security review, the procurement process, right? How long would that take, right? So we can, check back to the startups whether um, they know the process or not. Are they underestimate anything, or is too good to be true? Yeah, yeah, but some of the startups are too early. Yeah, that if the startups are too early, we probably ask for like the opinion whether um if um the startups are developed enough, that the products are developed enough in that level. What the level that the BU will adopt the solutions of the startups. Yeah, and
Mm.
yeah, and I think, the questions like, do you want the demo or do you want an intro with the startups is also like a valuable question. If they signal that, look, yeah, this is we want to, spare time to talk to the startups and get an intro or something like that. So that kind of give a good signal. Yeah. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that, if the if the BU kind of decline the introduction or something, and we will take it like, we will decline the investment decision. Right? It's kind of independent. Sometimes when the startups are too early, we uh, our lens of screening will be focused more on the team and whether they can pivot. But if the lens are kind of like, both, return rent lens and strategic lens, like, goes together, is the best scenarios for us. So we can have more conviction and invest in a higher ticket size. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks so much for sharing. Yeah, that's actually very insightful, actually, both, on the investor end as well as on the founder end. Yeah, so maybe right now we will shift gears a little bit. I think wanted to ask a little bit more about enterprise SaaS because I know that's an area you look at. So definitely, this has been something that's been on the rise recently as well. So just wanted to know a little bit more when you look at successful enterprise AI companies, do they ultimately win because they have the best product or because they have become very embedded within customer workflows and ecosystems?
It's a good question. I think both are important. Yeah, but
Mm.
probably at a different stage. From
Right.
the seed or early stage, we will look at the products and whether it solved a real pain point and there's a market, there's someone buying the solutions, right? But for the growth stage or the scaling companies, will probably look a little bit more into like the ecosystem embeddedness. Yeah, because
Mm.
we want to make sure that the enterprise will that they will have like a long-term relationship with enterprise and can win a long-term contract with higher average contract value. This will give a different lens for the different stage.
Right, right. So what I'm hearing is that maybe product gets you in the door, but distribution is what keeps the company there. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
yeah, that's right.
yeah. I think another theme I'm hearing is also that, winning enterprise customers isn't just about having the best technology, but being maybe trusted enough to sit within critical workflows. So maybe we can hear a little bit more as well about maybe compliance and auditability, whether this is becoming more and more important, and are you seeing that in your portfolio companies as well?
Yeah, compliance, security, and auditability is very
Hmm.
important, especially for the regulated industry like ours, right? The financial services. It can be in the healthcare, in legal, right? Yeah. So we see that the compliance shouldn't be like just the features. They
Yeah.
shouldn't be like a standalone companies or something like that. It should be embedded in in the the solutions itself,
Hmm.
right? And run parallel with the operation. For examples that I see in the companies that we are talking to in consumer loan companies, they have this AI compliance monitoring like the communication internally and externally. Yeah, especially the external communication is very important, right? When you market something to the clients or you collect you're doing the collections, call the clients to remind of the collections. It's it's very important that you comply with the law. Yeah, so that the AI compliance is running in parallel with the operation. That's what I'm seeing right now that I think is valuable.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, thanks so much. I think, yeah, what I'm hearing is, that there is there is an importance of trust, workflow ownership, and also domain expertise. Yeah,
Mm.
so I think maybe I'd like to shift from the enterprise side to the consumer and transaction side of the equation, because I think we are starting to see similar questions emerge around how AI changes the way transactions happen. So one of the themes we are watching closely is the emergence of agentic commerce, where AI doesn't just assist users but can actually initiate and execute transactions on their behalf. So from your perspective, where do you see the most interesting intersections of AI, commerce, and financial services today?
The intersection is definitely AI and blockchain that we are seeing right
Mm,
now. Yeah, with the open claw, right?
yeah.
Beginning of this year, that being a hot topic,
Mm,
people start to have their own agent, automated stuff for them. Like for me, I'm doing like a dashboard for stock price, oil price, gold price, right? Every morning, and the agents start to buy stuff for you. Like in this case, they
mhm.
the the token, if I run out the token, agent will buy more token with the rules that I set, right? So we'll start to see more of the machine to machine transaction. Yeah, and this kind of transaction is requires only like a subsend or a micro payment, right? So we see
Right.
that blockchain and stable coins is like a natural rail, yeah, for this kind of transaction. Yeah, and they kind of like operate 24/7. Um, they have programmable rule. Yeah, so we'll see that's coming, but probably not ready for the enterprise setup yet.
Right.
So yeah, we expect to see that more.
Yeah, so I guess what you're saying also is that we are still pretty early in that journey when it comes to agentic commerce. Probably still a bit in the experimentation phase, and in the enterprise side of things, maybe that is something we will see a bit more in the future.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's still very early, but you can see
Yeah.
the infrastructure and ecosystem is building up. Yeah,
Right.
with the growth in stable coins that you see today, right? And the regulatory framework that open up more and more in every like regions.
Yeah. So what do you think is the biggest challenge or bottleneck today? Is it the technology itself? Is it regulation, or is it simply consumer trust?
Yeah, I think the trust layer is very important. Um, I think a lot of startups try to figuring this out because the
Mm.
trust layers comes with the security that has to be in place, the
Right.
identity like verification, right? Know your agent. Otherwise, you don't know who you transact with, and the compliance layer and authorization, like what is the rules and what how the agent can spend money or what kind of products and service agent can cover that the number one challenge that I see.
Right. And assuming those challenges are eventually resolved, where do you think the most attractive opportunities sit within the value chain today? So what kind of companies are you most excited about?
I think that we are in this space for quite some times, like we betting on the blockchain as a financial infrastructure. We invest in the like of Fireblocks, M0 Axela that just got acquired by Circle. Yeah, so we see this activities very active. So it's very exciting time for us to see, and those are kind of like infrastructure level, right? And if the ecosystem are in place, right, we expect to see like the growth in the adoption. I just read about it yesterday that Deloitte survey that the retail recommendations are comes from AI, 15 to around 20%. Yeah, so
Mm.
those are a lot, right? Because when you kind of like go into your AI chatbot and ask for the things you want to buy, and AI suggests for the list of items, and 20% of them is actually like can be sold by the chatbot. So that's pretty amazing, like uh pretty like yeah, exciting number. So this is what I'm exciting about, like the agentic commerce in overall, and how AI can explore the products. Like how do you make your storefronts or your contents be like agent readable content,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Yeah, so that it can be like GEO instead of SEO. Like GEO is like generative engine optimization, right? Yeah, so that kind of like market is very large, and I'm very excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think definitely, I think the vision for agentic commerce is very exciting and very compelling. But like what you mentioned, we're still very early in terms of adoption, and many of the challenges we've discussed, whether it's trust or identity or settlement, I think it ultimately come back to the underlying financial infrastructure. So I think
Mm.
I want to move a little bit deeper into this infrastructure layer that needs to be built to support this future. At PitchBook, we identified payment infrastructure for agentic commerce as the top fintech opportunity. So, given SCBX's financial services background, I think you do have a strategic vantage point here. So, what are some of the opportunities you're seeing in this area, and what are some key challenges for agentic commerce to actually scale?
Mm. Yeah, for the payment infrastructure, I think you're right. We're seeing that trend as well, like that, the consolidation of the, payment infrastructure. Like I see that there's like, Mastercard that buying BBNK, right, to get the stablecoin rails, and also what I mentioned before, Circle just bought Axela for the interoperability capability. So I think that the consolidation trend is coming in, because the payment players want to get to the full value chain, meaning that they want to have like the distributions, they want to have the licenses, all the capabilities, including like stable coins or the interoperability, cross-chain ability, right? Yeah, so this is the trend that I'm seeing right now. Yeah, for the opportunity that I want to see in the future is probably like, the enterprise grade
Mm, mm.
infrastructure that can support this, agentic commerce and agentic payment. Yeah, which, the ecosystem is building. We're seeing like the search layer, we see the security layer, the trust layer. Yeah, we focus more on this kind of like ecosystem enabler layer.
Totally agree, and definitely that's something I'm really excited about. But I think, with that said, all this goodness of AI, where AI is getting great at automating tasks that were once considered exclusively human, like data entry, report writing, customer interactions, and even parts of investing, like what you mentioned earlier. So, what are your thoughts on, the future of work? Do you think AI will replace knowledge workers at scale eventually, or is that something you're not so worried about?
That there's a lot of tasks that will be automated, right? Yeah. And the junior roles may be smaller, but I don't think, it will entirely replace the knowledge worker. Yeah. I think it will increase the productivity, free up
Mm.
times to do more value add things like decision making, analytical tasks, and also like relationship management. Yes, that's something that I think is still, human first.
Yeah.
Yeah, and AI cannot really replace. And my view on like, in it replacement of like the junior role, right? I feel
Mm.
like we see that it's probably impossible that we will stop hiring except the CEO, right? So
Yeah.
they need to have like, the judgment. They need to have you need to know how to manage the relationship with the stakeholders. Yeah,
Mm.
that takes years of experience that AI cannot do. Yeah, so I see that knowledge worker, it's still, you know, um, maybe partly protected, and also seen that I'm talking to my friend in consulting business. They start hiring again because the enterprise wants, the uh, IT consulting or AI consulting to help them, integrate the model capabilities to the enterprise works.
Yeah, I think I totally agree as well. I mean, even in my role at PitchBook, where I'm a research analyst, I write research reports. I think there are questions sometimes like, oh, is this something that AI can do? But I guess the stance also, very similar to what you said, is that AI still cannot replace some of the more analytical parts of it, or even the more stakeholder management part of it, which is very important, I guess, even in a job like that. So I
Mm.
think, yeah, we've spent, the last half an hour talking about where AI is creating opportunities from enterprise software to commerce and financial infrastructure. So maybe we can zoom out a little bit and talk about how you think about identifying winners more broadly. So across everything we've discussed today, what do you think, really separates the AI companies that become enduring businesses from those that are simply riding the current wave of excitement?
Going back to like the question, right? That how to survive the disruption of
Mm, mm,
frontier
mm.
labs. Yeah, I think the startups need to have to develop a very strong defensibility mode. Yeah, that I can recap that it's about the proprietary data, right? The domain expertise, the workflow integration, and the outcome-based monetization. Yeah, and we see the examples of the sectors that are kind of strong in this, and we can give you an examples that I think is very like we are interested to look more into it is the robotics and healthcare,
Mm.
because the data modes from these kind of sectors are is from real world, is the closed, source of data that um, frontier labs cannot scrape it from the internet, right? Yeah, and every physical data and all like the from the manufacturing floor, from the wet labs, from the experiments will be trained into the model, and also like in every production, every deployment will create like the feedback loops, and I think that kind of amplify the capabilities and the defensibilities of those kind of startups in the sectors. Yeah, but I think other sectors will need to find ways to go down deep, like one level up, right? In order to be like integrate deeply with the enterprise workflow. Yeah, and those is valuable as well because you can access to the new data every day that generated from the work at your enterprise clients.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ned, for sharing your perspectives today. I think we are coming close towards the end, but I think if I were to summarize, this conversation, one of the key themes that really emerged from our discussion is that, well, AI is creating huge opportunities across different sectors like enterprise software, commerce, and financial service. I guess the long-term winners are those that will be defined by more than the technology alone. So things like trust, distribution, workflow ownership, and real business value still remain as important as ever. So yeah, with that, just wanted to say a very big thank you for joining us today, and thanks everyone for being part of the conversation as well.
Thank you so much, Melanie.